Hello everyone and welcome. This is Christine with Patter Crafts, and today I'm here with another design team project using the Scrapping for Less March Flavor of the Month card kit. We are using mini collection number 1, taking out all of my bits and pieces from this collection, and we're going to try to see how many cards we can make. My goal is to make 4. But I do end up making 6. So let's get started. So for this first card, I kind of had the idea I was going to use this fence piece in a landscape card. But as I'm putting this piece on there, I really don't like the way it fit. So I'm kind of figuring out what other ephemera I can use. And I decide, you know what, I'm going to use this as a portrait size card, and it's a little big to use it this way, so I'm just going to go ahead and put that on and then trim off the extra. So I'm lining the fence with the left side and the bottom, and then I'm going to go ahead and trim off the extra bits, which is nice because you still see the flowers, but the fence looks perfect. I'm going ahead and grabbing the Hello Spring sentiment. I just want the sentiment. I don't want all this little floral part around it. I have no problems cutting my stamps, but I am cutting the floral piece so that I can add to the Hello Spring later if I want to. But for this card, I don't want that floral part on there. So I went ahead and just trimmed that off. I'm adding some of the flower ephemera that I have left over. So we'll add the 2 flowers behind the fence. Before I do that, we're going to go ahead and stamp out the Hello Spring sentiment. I'm going to trim that out with a mini scalloped oval die. Pop that up on some foam tape. I'm also popping up the floral parts of the floral ephemera. So I'm going to go ahead and add little bits of foam tape to there, but then I'm bringing in the Ranger Multi-Medium Matte Glue for the bottom pieces for where I'm tucking it in behind the fence. I'm using this glue so that if it smears onto my card front in any way, you won't really notice once it's dry. Once that's done, I'm adding the smallest enamel dots, and I add all of them to some of the pink polka dots on that polka dot paper. So once that is all set, I'll add a little bit of sparkle with my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen, and we are going to call this card all set for today. So now that that card's all set, we'll move on to card number 2. For this card, I know I'm going to use all 3 of the ladybug ephemera pieces that I had. I'm going to be using these 2 pattern papers that are purple. The bottom is that floral with the ladybugs on there, but I want there to be some kind of break between the two pattern papers. So I used a scalloped border die to cut down some purple paper from my stash. I'm going to back that behind the smaller piece of pattern paper. Once that's done, I'm just going to go ahead and add this bigger piece on and then the smaller piece. You'll notice I did not trim the pattern paper. I just kind of added it on, and then once that was done, I just opened my card and trimmed off the excess. It's kind of been my new favorite way of adding pattern paper to the complete card front, so that way I don't end up with a little slice of cardstock that is not covered with pattern paper. So I'm using the Just Saying Hello stamp from the stamp set. I went ahead and stamped that out, used a mini scallop circle die to cut the sentiment out of the white cardstock, adhered that with some foam tape. I also used some foam tape for that middle ladybug. And that is all I did for that card. So moving on to card number 3, this piece is definitely long enough to cover the front, but it wasn't wide enough. So I'm grabbing this purple grid pattern paper, and I'm going to use that to the left so that I can cover the full front of a card. I'm going to go ahead and lay that down and then lay down this bunny paper, and I'm going to do it the same way I did with the previous card. I'm just laying the paper completely down and then trimming off the extra. Now I'm just kind of playing with some small scraps. What else do I want to put on here? And I decide this is actually a great card to use that really large ephemera piece. So once I've decided that's what I'm going to use, I grab the Thinking of You sentiment from the stamp set, stamped that out, and used a stitched fishtail sentiment banner die. And now I'm just adding the ephemera onto the card with some foam tape, because that is our focal point. I debate whether or not I want to put some enamel dots on this card, but I end up not adding anything more to it. So this is it for card number 2. Now we'll move on to card number 3. So with card number 3, I'm kind of got a lot of odd shaped pieces of pattern paper, which is actually kind of cool because I am really liking these last few cards, and they made me think outside the box a little bit because I had all these different type of shapes and sizes. Really do love that bunny paper, the bunny with the flowers and the fence. I actually end up using the pink version of this pattern and the white version on this card. So this pink piece I just adhered completely on to the card front, and then I'm adding the white version of this pattern. I'm going to pop that up onto some foam tape. Once that's done, I decide I'm going to use the bunny stamp for the focal point, and I went and dug out this dark blue ink that matches the cardstock really well. Now, the first image of this bunny, I did notice his nose didn't stamp out quite right, and I stamped the sentiment high from the stamp set above it. But then I decided I'm going to just try to stamp it one more time and see if I can get a better image, and this one looks so much better. And then I bring in that high sentiment again. I'm going to go ahead and just cut that out with a circle die. I grabbed a black gel pen, and I'm going to go ahead and add some dash lines all around the circle. My circle die tends to leave an indentation on my card stock when I trim it. I just followed that line to add the dash lines. Now I'm going to go ahead and pop that up with a little bit of foam tape and some liquid glue. And when I push the whole thing down, I smear some of the black gel pen. I tried to cover it up with a white gel pen, but that wasn't working. So I grabbed an enamel dot and popped that right over the top. Easy peasy. If you make a mistake, you just add an embellishment over the top. So that is it for this card. So now we'll move on to card number 4. And for this card, I've got all these little extra bits again. So I decided I'm going to use this triangular type shape, but it was a little oddly shaped, so I just trimmed it down so it fit better on the card. Then I'm looking for another piece of pattern paper to put underneath it. And I'm thinking I'm going to be able to do this the whole way down. Well, I'm not going to be able to because my pattern papers are all cut up in ways that does not fit this image. So once I realize nothing's really going to fit here, I decide, oh, guess what? Let's stamp the bunny stamp in that corner. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that bunny stamp again. I do try to clean it this way. Did not really work, but the result came out really nice. So I tried to clean the blue ink off without actually cleaning it off, and I used this really light pink ink to stamp the bunny, but because there was still blue ink on there, this bunny ended up coming out purple, which was really pretty and really went well with the patterns. Adding some of that pink ink to a acrylic block and using a water brush here, and we're going to try to water that down and flick that on, which ends up being some of that pink and purpley kind of color. So I'm going to do that for that lower corner, and I'm going to add the pattern paper. That little corner did not want to stay down to save my life. I end up having to basically put a big glob of the Ranger Multi-Matte Medium and smear it all over that corner in order to hold it down. I do decide to pop up this little piece with some foam tape because why not? I want to make sure that line between the two is even, so it does take a couple of minutes to make that fit properly. Grabbing the Hello Spring sentiment again, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp that to fill in the space next to the bunny. And that is it for that card. So moving on, I'm bringing in the other corner of some pattern paper. And I know I'm going to use that in the lower right-hand corner because that's how the image is created. So using the rest of my scrap papers, I grab these two bigger pieces and I trim them down so that they kind of follow the line of that bunny pattern paper, enough so that there is a little bit of a border from the cardstock between the two. So I just took the bigger pieces of scraps that I had left, and we're going to go ahead and trim those down so they fit this area, still giving a border to the left and to the top. For this middle piece, it's just making sure that the line up top matches the purple grid pattern paper, and then trimming it at an angle to kind of match what's going on with the triangular piece below. Now this little corner took a few extra minutes because I didn't have any scraps wide enough, or if they were wide enough, they weren't long enough. So I ended up having to cut the biggest scrap down some more. So I just figured out how wide I needed it. And then once I had that down, I went ahead and trimmed it and then used a pencil to kind of guide where I needed that to go to be trimmed sideways, or, you know, at that angle. And I was actually quite surprised how well all of that lined up. So once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and grab that same bunny stamp. I'm going to use the same pink ink pad again. This time it's definitely a little more pink, but you can see some of the undertones of the purple, or I should say the blue that makes the purple. We're going to go ahead and pop that up on some foam tape. I did die cut that out with a mini circle scallop die. And then I'm going to add the last two enamel dots to the card. So that is it for all the cards. What do I have left? Of course, I have the stamp set to add to my stash, and this is it for the scrap paper that I have left over. So that'll probably get recycled. I'll put the stamp in my stash. I've used up all the enamel dots and ephemera from this kit. Thank you so very much for joining me today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more and you're not already, please hit that subscribe button. But until next time, everyone, have a great day. Bye.